And greetings. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here with Todders and Aaron McIntyre and all of you. And we are brought to you by our friends over at First Cup Coffee Company, with a flavor for every freedom-loving American. And you can share their values with faith, like faith, family, and freedom. But don't buy the coffee for that reason alone. Buy it first and foremost because it's really good coffee. And it is, from all accounts, including Aaron's review when they came on board last year, because you guys know coffee is a food group to Aaron, like it is to a lot of you. They put the roast on date right there in every bag, because freshness is kind of one of their main themes. Shipped to you within days of being roasted, all right, and get a discount when you use my last name, Deace, as your promo code at firstcup.com. Firstcup.com, use the promo code Deace at firstcup.com. And also want to make sure you remember the latest issue 2 of the Blaze's new Frontier magazine is out right now. You cannot buy Frontier anywhere. It's not in stores. It's not online. It's a beautiful magazine. A lot of cool features each and every quarter. The only way to get it, through Blaze Unlimited. And you get early access to exclusive events, VIP opportunities, dedicated customer support, and VIP treatment, exclusive members-only content, and a premium experience for those of you that demand even more. This is how to get even more plugged in, go even deeper with us here at The Blaze. And right now, the first 500 people who subscribe get both issue 1 and issue 2 of Frontier magazine, the full Frontier experience from the beginning, as part of your subscription at blazeunlimited.com/Deace. Use the promo code Blaze500 to get $40 off. Promo code Blaze500 to get $40 off at blazeunlimited.com/Deace. All right, coming up on today's show, we'll be joined by the prophet of woe and lamentation, Daniel Horowitz, in the final segment of the program. We've got buy, sell, or hold coming your way here at the bottom of the hour when you guys take over the show. But Aaron takes over first as we lead it off with what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by Tariff Day. After a significant rebound in markets yesterday morning, news that Trump was following through with a 104% tariff on China in response to their retaliatory tariffs. Markets sunk again, though this morning it seems to be stabilizing. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says
it's unfortunate that the Chinese actually don't want to come and negotiate, because they are the worst offenders in the international trading system. They have the most imbalanced economy in the history of the modern world. And I can tell you that this escalation is a loser for them. That they have some very smart, the economists, the academicians, technocrats within their bureaucracy, and they would be telling the leadership that we do not have the edge here. They are the surplus country, that their exports to the U.S. are 5 times our exports to China. So they can raise their tariffs, but so what?
Last night, President Trump said,
the same people now telling me about how to deal with China are the ones who sold out America for decades to China. For decades, they gave up to China. I'm the only one that you know how much China's paid? Almost $700 billion in tariffs under me. And then they say, Donald Trump hasn't been tough on China.
China has vowed to fight to the end. The Supreme Court yesterday said President Trump is allowed to make executive decisions like firing 16,000 probationary federal workers. HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says it's time to get fluoride out of the water.
Evidence against fluoride is overwhelming. In animals, in animal models, and in human models, we know that it causes IQ loss, profound IQ loss, and it's dose related. So the more fluoride you get, the higher levels in your drinking water, your urine, the more likely it is you lose IQ and also other neurological injuries like ADHD.
A new study from the Cleveland Clinic of more than 53,000 people found that not only was this year's flu vaccine ineffective, you are actually 27% more likely to get the flu if you took the vaccine. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton says he's running for Senate.
Against John Cornyn, who apparently is running again for his 5th term, which would put him there 3 decades. It's definitely time for a change in Texas. We have another great U.S. Senator, Ted Cruz, and it's time we have another great senator that will actually stand up and fight for Republican values, fight for the values of the people of Texas, and also support Donald Trump in the areas that he's focused on in a very significant way. And that's what I plan on doing.
And finally, what would it look like if a Disney Films executive ran their theme parks?
Yeah, I've been an executive at Disney feature films for a while, and they just actually, obviously that business is completely tanking, so they, just sent me over here to the parks to try to make some changes, really make some improvement. Yeah, just with the Mickey ears, I think it's 2025. A lot of people have said those ears are kind of appropriating mouse culture, so, we've gotten rid of those. Yeah, Dumbo, Sleeping Beauty, we still have all the classics. Obviously, we can't have any new rides or attractions out here because we haven't had a movie that anyone would recognize in the last 10 years. But when we do, every time someone gets a photo with Tigger, now we just give them a little pamphlet about animal extinction. At 5 o'clock, we have the Mickey and Minnie greeting, which is obviously a favorite. And then at 5:30, we have the Mickey and Mickey, actually. And then at 6, we have Minnie and Minnie.
That's comedian John Crist, and that's what happened while we were away.
What is going to be fascinating is Amy and I have been watching videos on YouTube for Universal's new Epic Universe park that it's launching.
Bella has been sending me some of those.
Okay. And, I know a little bit of the backstory to this because I've heard some of this from the governor of Florida. It's not a coincidence that right around the time Disney decided to try to go to war and chose poorly to go to war with the governor of Florida, its primary competitor in the state from an amusement park standpoint, Universal made the largest investment that's been made in the state by any attraction in decades. And these videos are incredible. They are wow. And Disney's got a choice, man. And its two options are it's going to turn that John Crist bit into real life and just completely lean into its own agitprop, or it's going to turn away from what it's done in recent years. Because the thing that's been kept largely immune from Disney's decline until now has been the parks. But what Universal is launching next month with Epic Universe is absolutely on multiple fronts next level stuff. Aaron's Montage brought to you by our friends over at Angel Studios. I can't wait to go see their new film this weekend. That's why I keep turning down their screeners. I want to see it in theaters for the first time, going to see it for Palm Sunday weekend. King of Kings. And I love the way that this is brought forth. It's an animated form, but it's Charles Dickens telling the story of Christ to one of his children. And the voice cast here, Pierce Brosnan, Kenneth Branagh, Ben Kingsley, Uma Thurman, Forrest Whitaker, Oscar Isaac, and more. There is a lot of awards in that cast, folks. A lot of awards. So I'm looking forward to this production. Get your tickets now. Theaters nationwide this weekend. Angel.com/Steve. Again, the King of Kings at Angel.com/Steve. So, by and large, we have not done this very much with this iteration of the Trump White House since they took over, because I think we've all been, all three of us, to various degrees at various moments, supportive to enthusiastic about the overall tenor of the level of messaging coming out of this Trump White House, starting from the day it took office in January 20th, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
For the most part.
Yeah.
The Trump set the tone. He sits there and he gives his inaugural address indoors. They said it was because of the cold. I think we all know it really is because they didn't trust that they weren't going to try to shoot him one more time, right? Okay. And with all of them in even closer quarters now because they're indoors there in the rotunda, he just calls them all out right to their faces. Remember that? We were doing our show live. We were basically doing a Mystery Science Theater live soliloquy. Okay, 3-man soliloquy. It's kind of an oxymoron, but that's what we were doing as the inauguration was occurring. And he's just sitting there, just laying down ordinance on these people right to their faces, right?
Yes.
And that kind of set the tone. Todd, I joked with you before the show today. Caroline Levitt announced this morning that if you are a reporter and you have pronouns in your bio and you attempt to contact her, she will just ignore you.
Yeah.
Since you're ignoring reality, she sees no point in talking to you because you can't be reached, you can't be reasoned with, so there's no point.
Absolutely.
And even if you know what, I'm just telling you, I half jokingly said this, but if all I would have known we would have gotten out of Trump winning again was just whoever was going to be White House spokesperson saying that to the press, I think I just would have voted for Trump on just for that moment in and of itself. Okay. So this is, mark the tape, April 9th. This is the first time that I think they may need some of my unsolicited messaging counsel. And just for proof of concept, I'm going to be on our colleague Liz Wheeler's show later today. We taped that interview right before the show started this morning, and I tried this messaging out on her. And she's obviously, very connected to the Trump political world. Aaron, you listened to that interview. She seemed to be pretty responsive to what I'm about to suggest, right? So I wanted to test it, on kind of Trump's native audience before I, brought this to the table. I won't say that I'm concerned yet, but I think that if we don't at least attempt something along the lines of what I'm suggesting, it could become a concern. I think one of the great mistakes that was made by the Bush administration after 9/11 is after we had that unifying moment, really the last time we've had a unifying moment as a people, the month or so post 9/11. And especially once the full invasion of Afghanistan was underway. And this was especially true. We invaded Afghanistan in October of 2001. We invaded Iraq. I think that was March of 2003. I think it was. So these were about a year and a half separated. But the message was sent from the White House under Bush Cheney. Hey, keep going to Costco and being Americans, or the terrorists win. We'll handle the war front here, and kind of out of sight, out of mind. We'll take it from here. And you do you, America. There was really never a mobilized home front after 9/11. And so all of that unity paid off in getting George W. Bush reelected, but it had no lasting capital beyond that, okay? And so when the fog of war invariably takes over, and it does in any war, even the most righteous of wars is going to have Valley Forge. Because the other side, they To quote Bobby Knight, the other team's got their players are on scholarship too. Okay, I mean they're shooting back, right? It's called war, not practice, correct? So they're shooting back. If we're in the colonial era, they've got cannons too. Okay, they've got muskets too. If we're in a World War II era, they've got tanks too. They've got planes too. If we're in our era, they've got drones too. They've got they've got various weapons of mass destruction and technological advancement too. They can fire EMPs too. And therefore, things aren't always going to go according to plan. And as the great prophet Mike Tyson once said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Things aren't always going to go according to plan. There are going to be dips. And there are going to be moments. We're coming up on Good Friday. That was a bit of a dip. If you were an apostle, that was a bit of a dip. Right? And you're thinking, which one of us is going up on the tree next?
That's the greatest paraphrase of Good Friday ever.
Yes, bit of a dip. Okay. All right. So then, 48 hours later, things kind of changed. Okay. But, your enemies don't just lay down because you chose to fight back. And there will be circumstances beyond your control. And so lo and behold, we topple Saddam in Iraq. We think the worst is over. And that happened very early on in that war, as a matter of fact. But underneath the current, we had forgot Jeane Kirkpatrick's maxim. That sometimes, and she was one of the national security advisors for Ronald Reagan, in some cultures, the best you can do, given the state of that culture and its belief system and worldview, the best you can do is a somewhat friendly to the United States tyrant who will keep an even worse impulse of, belief system underneath the surface at bay. And what came forward after Saddam and his party, the Sunnis, were thrown out of power, came the Shias and Anbar province and Fallujah and a quagmire. The enemy was always going to shoot back. That was always going to happen. The problem was because there was no home front mobilized. The George W. Bush presidency was mired down, watered down in this quagmire, and never recovered from it. I think I saw some messaging from the guy from Shark Tank, Kevin O'Leary, thank you. Some messaging that's been trending from him from CNN last night, and I thought it was absolutely masterful. Let me give you some data here, all right? We've run a lot of articles, and there's been a lot of, I think, justifiable angst on the right in the last few years about how much farmland Bill Gates has been buying up, right? Do you know who owns even more U.S. farmland than Bill Gates does? China does. China does. Do you know who controls? So they have a major a footprint within our food supply. There's a reason why the former governor of Iowa, when he was appointed ambassador to a country by Trump, what country was he appointed ambassador to? The governor of the number one farm state in the union. Where was he appointed governor, or where was he appointed ambassador to?
China.
China. Not a coincidence. Not a coincidence at all. How about our medicine supply? At least 75% of the world's antibiotic supply chain is controlled by China.
Not as if they didn't just try to poison us.
Correct.
Anything.
Correct. How about culturally? Not that our universities needed any help becoming more Marxist, but if you noticed in the last decade or so, they've just gone completely Marxist. Could be a coincidence. Correlation certainly isn't always causation. But for about the last decade or so, we have been importing at least 300,000 Chinese nationalist students into our universities on an annual basis. Again, given the arc they were already on, probably would have ended up in this space. On the other hand, probably didn't help importing. I think we have one city in the state of Iowa that has this many people, the one we live in. No other city in Iowa has anything close to 300,000, right? Mm-hmm. Probably didn't, though, help necessarily the rate or pace of arrival date, importing a huge conglomerate of communist, Marxist, indoctrinated students into our major universities. Probably didn't help slow the pace of that indoctrination down. Fair to say, maybe?
Fair.
At least anecdotally to some degree.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah, and you referenced this too. At the very least, they conspired with our own mad scientists to concoct a virus, which they then unleashed. They did biblical levels of damage and biblical levels of havoc on the world. I think this is now about runway. All right? And the analogy that I used yesterday of what Reagan attempted to do economically to the Soviet Union is in many respects what Trump is trying to do now to the Chinese Communist Party. The winner of this is going to be determined ultimately by runway. Who's got more political runway? Are there factions within the CCP that are maybe younger, their variation of more progressive, who are like, listen, we like all the power that being a member in good standing of the party grants us, but we like all those American consumers buying our goods and puffing up our portfolios at the exact same time. So Xi, you've got some runway, but it ain't much, brother. Otherwise, your faction may be on the outs and ours takes over. It's not going to be like some uprising of the people. They'll just put the tanks and run the people over. It'll be inner subterfuge. Other constituency groups within the CCP that want control and power, like a oligarchy, like the Politburo was in the old Soviet Union. Trump will not have as much control over his runway as the Chinese will. For the simple reason is he can't nor would he do the things to his own people that the Chi-Coms will. So already there is a built-in advantage that the Chi-Coms have. Doesn't mean we don't have built-in advantages. I mean, I would argue we've got the biggest one. Our people can afford to buy all the cheap goods that they're making over there. You see what I'm saying? I mean, we are their primary market of consumption. So that's, to me, the number one, no pun intended, trump card here. But again, you have to see the world for as it is. Do not think naively. The CCP did not and has not continued to manage one of the largest populations in the world and keep it under its boot because they're morons and idiots and don't know what they're doing. Or they blink and pucker at the first sign of any kind of pushback here. See what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Okay. Again, the guys over in Beijing, they're on scholarship too. They're good at this too. They practice too. They've got guns too. The biggest leverage point they have is they inherently, because of what they can and will do to their people, have more political runway than Donald Trump does. What the president needs to do is extend his runway. The runway will shrink if this becomes a primarily economic ideological battle. Because sooner or later, somebody's going to go to Walmart and try to buy a TV before the Masters or the PGA Championship or the NBA Finals that they've been saving up for. And they thought that 65-inch 4K TV at Walmart was going to cost them $399, and now it's $599. Or now it's not even there.
And yes, we are that shallow in our
Yes,
principles.
I'm using that example specifically. Because are there other countries, like somebody suggested this to me on X, I thought it was brilliant. Are there other communist countries that could also pay their people cheap wages and import goods to us at cheap costs that would not have the other underlying qualifiers and negative criteria that comes with a relationship with China, where they essentially are subversively invading your country? Sure. We can just have the TVs come from Vietnam instead, right? They can make them. And they don't think necessarily that they have a manifest destiny to the entire Pacific Rim. But they are not in a place right now to be instantly supplanting that Chinese supply chain. Stuff takes some time. We all just learned about supply chains a few years ago, I think it's also very possible the Chi-Coms, dude, they already released a virus on us. Why wouldn't they just go ahead and take the medicines away the next time? All right. They wrecked our demand the last time. But this time, maybe they go after the supply. Hey, we'll just, that's less penicillin for you. How you like them apples? I think the president will extend his runway if he makes this a mission for the American people. Enlist the American people in making America first. That this is our mission. Let's face it, this is not a president that does the fireside chat, hunker down in the winter of 41 and 42, that's just not who he is, okay? I'm not a swimsuit model, right? We all have strengths and weaknesses, okay?
And let's face it, we aren't the people to really receive that message.
And that's probably why we love the guy, because we don't want that message. We want it, hey, it's going to happen right now. That's what we want. And that's what he's really good at messaging at, okay? What I do think he can do is enlist the American people in the overall cause. Make this less economic and more patriotic. Listen, the Kevin O'Learys of the world, God bless him, and he's doing the Lord's work right now, but people with the wealth that him and Trump have, this is just maybe they got to fly their private plane out of the Hamptons 24 hours earlier than they thought. Nevertheless, though, there are people, including in audiences like this, people of means that have rightfully worked their entire lives to get to this point of retirement and pass on an inheritance to their children and grandchildren. They have every right to be nervous right now, and they deserve our grace. Enlist them in the fight and the mission. Say, hey, your grandparents, they put off they put off what they really wanted and desired, and frankly, what was theirs. Because there were forces at work that weren't going to let them have those things anymore and pass them on to you. This is our moment. We've got the leverage right now. They can't hold out for very long. They need you to buy their goods. We're in this together. I think that Trump could tie this back to COVID. It's clear he's been very hesitant to have a reckoning about this rhetorically because he's on video. Well, he's on video. It's interesting. If he's on video, many times instinctively saying the right things about what was being done to the country up front, and then shortly thereafter succumbing to the bureaucracy and undermining his original instincts. Right. So everybody can pick a clip. Hey, Trump was originally right about hydroxychloroquine. He was. He was originally right about ultraviolet sunlight. He was. Okay. But then you can find another clip if you don't like the guy. You can find another clip where he's just sitting there essentially slurping and simping for Fauci Birx, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody, it's a Rorschach. Everybody gets to see what they want to see. He can now, to borrow a phrase here, decouple himself from that legacy once and for all. Who is it that gave us this virus? We're at very least going to reset things where they were in 2019. And if we do this right and we do it together, we can reset things back to where they should have been a generation ago. If mom wants to work outside the home, that's her choice. That's the family's choice. It's not a requirement anymore. You want to pass on what you made? You want to listen, Chris Matthews, well, we get all our lumber from Canada. I believe we have trees in the U.S., right? We have about 80,000 loggers. I don't know if that's enough. I'm not studied the logging industry recently. But if it's not enough, I got an idea of how you get more loggers, pay a real good wage for people to log. And they probably will. Now the money stays here. Man, dude, you're a young man. You're struggling to find a woman. Have no college debt. You're 26, have no debt. And you're making 80, 90, 100K a year with benefits for the logging industry in America. Look pretty attractive. Changes the entire cultural calculus. And I think this is the messaging that the White House needs to deploy more. If we continue to make this about widgets and trade and tariff rates, and it gets into those details, we're going to lose people. Many people don't understand modern economics and finance. And I think we're going to shrink our runway. I think we expand our runway to truly have a fight over leverage now. By making this a patriotic mission, enlist the American people in the mission. This is a generational mission to reset things reset this back to the America you grew up in. That everybody, Republican or Democrat, thought they were going to pass on to their people to their kids a better country than the one they inherited. We're resetting that clock. So more patriotic messaging, less economic messaging. Gentlemen, what do you think?
I absolutely agree. If for no other reason, finding out once and for all if we the people are in fact prepared, if given a genuine opportunity, are ready and willing to be we the people again. That's fundamental to all this. And because I see what Aaron does every single day with his montage, this administration has done a great job with both Stephen Miller and Levitt direct messaging on specific topics. But Steve, you were talking about a meta that needs its own carte blanche on a regular basis. Somebody like Aaron and you, Steve, combining in the White House to put out regular videos that accomplish what you're talking about. You've said many times before, Steve, that in this modern day and age, you have to have the emotional hook. You've got to paint that picture. It needs to have a soundtrack. That you're absolutely right. I'm just saying, I'm seeing you and raising you. You need the people who know how to do this really well, and they need to not just do it once and be done with it. It has to be a regular drumbeat, that meta narrative.
We have lamented for years on this show, and I think rightfully so, that most of the right's narratives exist solely in reaction to what the left is doing. What is the unchanging standard in that dynamic? The left. Mm-hmm. This is an opportunity to set forth an affirmative, positive, alternative vision, not in reaction to something, but exists on its own.
Yes.
That is, I think, when you're looking at some of the echoes and parallels, I think that the Democrat Party is dealing with right now, it kind of echoes what we've lamented about the Republican Party 20 years ago. So there's a real opportunity now to further, on a domestic level, further isolate them by painting an affirmative vision of the future for all Americans. So the opportunities are plentiful here. Can they follow through and do it?
I'm going to put off buy, sell, or hold for a segment. There's a story I was alerted to by a source last night that I want to highlight for this audience because it will, I think, further itemize another problem we're often discussing. Stay tuned for that. was just talking about over 75% of the world's antibiotic supply chain is controlled by China. I mean, we are heading in, folks, to some uncertainty. There's no question about that. So now is a great time for you to partner with our friends over at Jace Medical. They're a company that exists exclusively for moments just like this. All right, make sure you've got a backup of their Jace case of some of the most important proven antibiotics in human history, like amoxicillin from the penicillin family, doxycycline for those of you that are allergic to penicillin class of drugs like me. Doxycycline is often a very suitable replacement as well, and more. And you can get that Jace case for a discount right now when you go to jace.com, J-A-S-E, jace.com/Deace, jace.com/Deace. You can also expand and customize your Jace case now if you've got some specific needs you're after, like, say, ivermectin. This is one path in order to get that, okay? Jace.com/Deace is where you can go, get a discount on your order when you use the promo code Deace. Enter the code Deace at checkout when you go to Jace, J-A-S-E, jace.com/Deace. Todd, real quick, totally off topic, but since this came up in Aaron's montage, I want to get your take on this, because this is your, like, native constituency, all right? And I don't know the answer. That's why I'm asking. So I'm not trying to trap you. I don't know. I'm genuinely curious. All right. RFK Jr. taking the fluoride out of the water as a trade-off for telling people to get the MMR vaccine. Remember the old Jimmy Johnson trade chart? All the NFL teams go by it now. Okay. The compensation, when you trade us with draft picks, here's what, for a high draft pick, the trade-off that comes with that, right? The give and take that comes with that. I'm asking, I don't know. I'm relatively new to many of these conversations. Okay. All right. So RFK Jr. going hardcore publicly about getting the fluoride out of the water, at the same time putting out essentially a hostage tweet telling people to take the MMR vaccine, which the last I checked was the something pointing out the toxicity of the MMR vaccine was still the pinned tweet atop the X account of his native organization, Children's Health Defense. Okay. Is that a good trade-off? I'm asking. I don't know.
No, and it's obvious that many as you pointed out, because you have eyes to see now after COVID, you pointed out just a couple of days ago how many known people in this fight were reacting negatively to that. It was just unnecessary. As I said,
meaning his tweet in support of the MMR vaccine.
How am I supposed to?
Del Bigtree was the first reply I saw.
There's Susan Humphreys, who's just made very, very popular. I've known about her obviously for decades, but she was just on Joe Rogan, so she's gone viral. She basically said, like, I understand nuance, patience. I counseled that when he said something kind of middle groundish, and that's when I gave you a reminder of the magical power of vaccines. Like, you weren't just going to go fighting this demon, and they were just going to say, as you said, Steve, my bad, I'm done. It was going to take a little time, but that was kind of like some mushy placeholder stuff. There was no reason to say what he said, which is kind of.
I mean, he basically went full Ben Shapiro. He did everything but call you a dope if you don't take the MMR vaccine, basically.
It's a little terrifying. So, no, it's not even remotely close to a understandable trade-off.
Okay, I don't know. I'm asking because it's clear there's going to have to be some trade-offs here. Okay, so that would be a trade. So let's just say he traded away his first-round draft pick. You don't think the compensation he got in return was justifiable trading away for RFK Jr., trading that first-round draft pick? He didn't get
the trade-off. Is it not happening day one as fast as everybody absolutely wants it, because you are dealing with real evil. That's the trade-off. But saying that it might, saying the opposite of the very thing. I mean, that was the equivalent of him lighting himself on fire. It makes absolutely no sense.
Okay. Speaking of not making any sense, we continue on our show to focus and fixate, and I think I've been upfront about this to you guys, but let me just reiterate. I am expending almost whatever capital I have and influence I have with the people currently in power after the last election. I am expending it all on the courts. It's why you haven't seen me say much about the budget fight or some of these other things right now. It's not that I don't think they're important, but you only get so many bullets in the chamber. Again, we do brutal honesty here as long as we're not, betraying a confidence. It's not like my standing in MAGA world is really high after the last primary. Fair? Mm-hmm. Okay. So I don't have a lot of margin for error if I'm trying to if I wasn't trying to positively influence them, I'd have a take on a broad slate of issues. But there's one particular issue right now that I think is of existential importance to the country that I have a unique amount of credibility and training on. And it's fighting back against judicial tyranny, supremacy, insurrection. And since I absolutely believe that he cannot be successful without resetting, he wants to reset the global order. I'm in favor of that. He's going to have to reset the constitutional order too. I mean, we just can't sustain a country on one vote on the Supreme Court decides if 77 million Americans that voted for the Constitution to be upheld by their borders being defended is allowed to proceed and given permission. That's just not a sustainable model, especially in light of the story I'm about to share with you here in a minute. And so I am focused all of whatever political capital I have, especially because I do know, I've been told, some of what I've been writing and saying recently has made the rounds among some people who matter over at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. So if I can play a 1% role, 1%, and Trump giving us an Abraham Lincoln level moment that we desperately need right now to reset a government by the consent of the governed, where the people are sovereign and not an unelected branch of the government, but the governed give the consent. It's not governed by the consent of the government, but government by the consent of the governed. If I can play even a 1% role, that Trump will be the reset switch for that dynamic. To me, that's a way more valuable investment of my capital than getting involved in every single fight, even if it involves friends of mine. You may disagree. You might even be right. But the name over the shoulder here says Steve Deace. And so it's my capital to invest, and that's the decision I've made. And you get to decide whether you agree with that decision or not. And I respect you if you don't. Fair enough?
Yes.
Because there was a story, I got alerted to this by a source, a little birdie, right before I went to bed last night. This is nuts. And I mean, even by the standards of what we talk about every day, this is nuts. I had to go back to my source 2 or 3. This is right. I have this right. Yeah, this is what happened. This is crazy. So you guys remember the anti-Semitic meltdowns on the campuses, particularly Columbia University last year? Remember those?
Yeah.
Okay. So what happened after that? Is there were some right-wing judges, some base judges, that decided I'm not hiring any more clerks, staffers from these universities that have this element involved on their campuses running amok until they clean it up. I'm just not hiring them, okay? One of these based judges is Trump's appointee for Deputy Secretary of Agriculture. So somebody we'd see around our state quite a bit over the next few years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the reason why you haven't heard his name, would you like to know why you haven't heard his name? Why he hasn't been out and about doing his job yet? Let me tell you why. He has been mired in a months-long process in the federal courts about whether he is guilty of a form of discrimination by refusing to hire people who have the worldviews that were supportive of the demonstrations and the mobocracies that took place on campuses like Columbia University a year ago. Now, that in and of itself would be alarming enough,
yes,
right? That would be alarming enough. Here we have actually a good judge, one of our own, and he's like, just so you know, if you came from that school, don't even apply for a job. It's not happening. I don't want any part of my judgeship being a touchstone for any more of that infestation to get it to rot gut out and hollow out the rest of the culture of jurisprudence in America. It would be bad enough if that's what he was facing a months-long ethics fight over. That is inexcusable enough. How dare you? You don't want to hire people that are favorable to the folks that flew the planes into the towers? To think Ayatollah Khomeini maybe just slightly misunderstood. That would be bad enough, man, but I haven't even given you the punchline yet. You want the punchline to this joke?
No.
Because I know, no, you don't. No, you don't. Because I promise you ain't going to be laughing. No, you don't want it.
What happened to this guy's truth, by the way? Why doesn't he get his truth?
The ethics complaint. Remember when 8 million people in California voted for marriage between a man and a woman and the Supreme Court said they had no standing to make sure their votes counted? Remember that?
Yeah.
They lack standing. How often when we try to countersue in these courts, we're told we lack standing? Unless we get a judge like the one that Trump's trying to appoint the Department of Ag, okay? But they are like 1 out of 20% of the judges in these courts, okay? So unless we get one of those judges, how often we're told we lack standing? We lack standing over and over again. You lack standing. You might be an American, born, raised here, pay your taxes here, die here, own guns, do most of the living dying and bill paying around here, but you lack standing. How many times we're told that, right? Oh. Folks, the ethics complaint was brought by a convicted terrorist. I kid you not. He's in prison now. He's in prison right now. Firebombing, arson. He's in prison now. One of the terrorists who was firebombing and arsoning Jewish houses of worship, who is in prison now, is the source of the ethics complaint. This got all the way to the 7th Circuit. Before finally, and thanks to some of our friends in the conservative legal beagle community, like the fine people at First Liberty, who represented our now future Deputy Secretary of Ag, finally some adult stepped in and said, we're going to stop this madness right now. But this went on for months. You have no standing to make sure your elections are secure. You have no standing to make sure your rights are maintained and preserved. You have no standing to make sure that your borders are secure. But a convicted terrorist, an arsonist, has standing to file an ethics complaint against a judge over discriminatory practices for refusing to hire people with the very ideology of the terrorists. This is Al Pacino's brilliant but brutal monologue at the end of The Devil's Advocate, where John Milton just unloads on what he will do to American culture through the courts. Utter madness, darkness. But in this realm, it's a day that ends in Y. It's just a day that ends in Y. It's just a day that ends in Y. The rarity is that it got stopped at all. That's the rarity. So credit to the 7th Circuit for that. That's nuts. We can't live like this. We cannot live like this. We're 77 million people that want a president to do what the Constitution explicitly and specifically empowers and enumerates for him to do. Cannot have their wishes confirmed until 5 out of 9 justices say so. We can't live like that. None of whom they voted for. None of them. We can't live like that. Which side of the bed did Brett Kavanaugh, John Roberts, and Amy Coney Barrett get up in the morning determines all of our fates? We can't live like this. You don't have standing to sue your state for voter fraud. You don't have standing to make sure your vote for marriage by popular referendum, the most democratic process we have. But a terrorist who's in prison, he's in prison. He has standing to file ethics complaints. We cannot live like this. And I am going to keep hammering this point home. Because let me give you a nightmare. You know, we haven't been Vanta Black in a while. I think I said at the Christ is King conference last week, and for the first time in my career, I've at least flirted with optimism. I think I said that. Maybe I was just caught up in the room. I don't know. All right. You want to get Vanta Black for a second? I mean, Trump gets concessions, some trade deal. I mean, what's to stop some Chinese simp organization in America for suing? So China can say, hey, we complied. Some Chinese simp. There's almost 3,000 corporations in America the Chi-Coms have ownership stake in. Almost 3,000. Let's just say one of them sues. We don't like these terms. Trump didn't have the power to negotiate this. And a federal judge steps in and says, you're right. Universal injunction. And China turns back around and says, well, we did comply, Mr. President, but your court stepped in. So I guess back to cheap goods and $1 trillion deficits it is. You see what I'm saying? Literally any win you have is one bowel movement of an unelected judge away from being erased. We cannot live like this. We can't. Thoughts?
There was another time you may have heard of that we couldn't live like this. And the decision before us is whether we were going to live faithfully according to an anointed vision or not, which Steve laid out in his 3 options on Monday. It's called the Book of Judges. And that's as reflective of where we are right now as anybody, any place else. Everyone did what was right in their own eyes. How else do you explain what Steve just laid out to you? Getting that far up the chain.
Well, we were out in front on the issue of judicial supremacy and tyranny this go around, as per usual, because it was, I think back in February, I produced that montage with all of just the absurd made up examples of different judges, made up judges from different jurisdictions, you know, just ruling on absurd things. I didn't think anything could top a small claims court judge in the Tularosa Basin, ruling against Trump, but I think reality has surpassed that now.
Buy, sell, or hold is next. All right, back here with the Steve Deace Show, powered by Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. I'm Steve Deace with Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre. Let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. You can email us, steve@stevedeace.com, to find out how to take access to that, or just go right to it. You can also follow us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. Follow Steve Deace there, please. Like our new, it's not our new, give us a new like on our old Facebook page, facebook.com/Steve Deace, facebook.com/Steve Deace. Trying to see if Facebook has taken the thumb off the scale a little bit to let our page grow again. Facebook.com/Steve Deace. You can also follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Please subscribe to our new YouTube channel at Deace Show on YouTube. That's at Deace Show on YouTube. I don't know where we are right now, but I looked before we went on the air today, and our last 2 episodes were both in the top 15 of all religion and spirituality episodes on iTunes. So thank you guys very much for that.
Is that glass half full or half empty?
Yes. Especially if you look at maybe some of the other episodes that are trending around there and you're like, of these things is not like the other. All right. But thank you for that. Please leave us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice, especially if it's Apple, and hit subscribe, or if you get us through Apple, and that's the number one way most of you do get our show. Hit follow there, and that'll make sure subscribe everywhere else. Follow on Apple. We'll make sure that every time we do a new episode, it's there in your feed every single time. And this part of the show brought to you by our friends over at Fast Growing Trees. Did you know they've got the largest online nursery in the United States with thousands of different plants, over 2 million happy customers, plants for all of your yard's needs, fruit trees, privacy trees, or as they say over across the pond, privacy, flowering trees, shrubs, and so much more. Whatever you're interested in, they've got you covered. Now, I know what you're thinking. How in the world are you going to navigate a catalog of 6,000 samples? I don't know anything. I don't know anything either. But whenever Amy and I have used their catalog, they have made it extremely easy to navigate. Find what you want. It'll be shipped right to your door. Sent to go on local nursery there, put the seats down in the minivan and get all that dirt and everything else all over the place. It'll be shipped right to your door. They also have support from their trained plant experts. They're on call to help you plan your landscaping this year. And they've got the best deals this spring for your yard, up to half off on selected plants and other deals. And listeners to our show, you get 15% off your very first purchase when you use the code DACE at checkout. An additional 15% off with the code DACE at checkout for your first purchase at fastgrowingtrees.com. Promo code DACE, fastgrowingtrees.com, promo code DACE. All right, bottom of the hour. The prophet of woe and lamentation, Daniel Horowitz, will join us. We're, however, going to launch buy, sell, or hold. This is where you guys have the propositions Todd and I will consider that Aaron has selected for our consideration. We will get through as many of these as we possibly can. And the ones we don't get to, we'll do in the overtime for Blaze TV subscribers at blazetv.com/Deace later today, blazetv.com/Deace. All right, so Todd, you're going to decide, are you buying it? Are you selling it? All right.
And that's it. And that's it. Trying to hit it off at the pass.
You are permitted to hold, though. I mean, so that all righteousness would be fulfilled. Of course, let us make sure we stipulate all of the rules. You are permitted to hold. I mean, it is called buy, sell, and hold, not just buy or sell, right? You are permitted to hold, but because it would be really a self-punking and a self-debasement of extraordinary circumstances, something debasing must fall upon you.
Just unmanly, yeah.
Yeah, for daring to punk out with a sell, all right? And if you use your hold, you have to find out for yourself firsthand why Lindsey Graham goes by the name Filibuster on Grindr. All right? That might be one of the best ones I've ever come up with.
Like last hour, I'm reliably told that my messaging is getting all the way to the White House. This hour, filibuster! That's broadcasting, folks! I thought for a second there like you hadn't fully prepared. Like you were like going to just totally make something up weak and you just kind of had to fill it. No, you obviously had been.
No, I just came up with that just now. I wasn't prepared. I just let that one drop.
That's even worse.
Yes. Because this is where the divine inspiration goes at a moment's notice.
Imagine if I used my powers for good. All right, Aaron, fire away.
Let's begin with Jeff Gibson. A recession is classified as 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP. The media is trying to convince us that we're in a recession in less than a week. This will be a test of how much power the media still has on the American people, on how they react.
I'll buy, but I think the media will be very disappointed. I mean, listen, if Trump tried to do in his first term what he's doing right now, the media coverage would be way more ominous and threatening. I mean, again, we want this to be successful, but there have been some missteps here. I mean, let's be honest. The messaging on this has evolved in just the last few days. First, it was reciprocal tariffs only. And then it was, we're going to reset global trade. And then it was Elon Musk versus Peter Navarro and whether Elon Musk is just a car assembler or not. And then it was, well, we actually want to isolate China. I mean, there have been several messaging iterations here in the last few days.
And I gave him the benefit of the doubt at the beginning because, maybe the uncertainty, the good cop, bad cop, that's part of the negotiation. But I think it's pretty clear now where we're getting into messaging fumbling.
There has been. And if this level of fumbling had happened in the first term, the White House, the Trump White House would have been just overwhelmed with it. The media not only can't ding the Trump White House, even when it does a misstep, it apparently can't get dinged. You know what I'm saying? There's just no credibility left there. There's just none. Now, let me say this. That is not necessarily a good thing. I mean, it's a good thing that this iteration of the media is out of credibility. That is a good thing. But to it's not good for a free society to have a media with no credibility at all. Because I don't care who you are, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory, man. We need accountability mechanisms. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So it's a good thing that this iteration of the media has lost all of its credibility. It is not a good thing, however, that we don't have a mainstream media without any credibility at all. That's not good moving forward here. That's not good.
Right.
Todd, any other thoughts?
No, I am buying.
Next, we go to uncontexted Deace 2 Electric Boogaloo. There's actually two parts here. Okay, one is more subtle. We'll go with the not so subtle one. Aaron will invite Todd, the Catholic, to the Easter services at his not Catholic church, and Todd will reply with, "I'm Catholic." Catholic. Sell.
You don't invite anybody to anything.
No.
I mean, you lost the plot there on the...
Okay.
I'm putting Aaron and invite in the same sentence.
Here's the more subtle buy, sell, or hold submission. I don't think I've ever actually said the name of the church that I attend. But the graphic that Uncontexted Deace 2 used there is my church's Easter invitation graphic. And I know that it's not just a template that 100 churches use, because the creative director at our church designs everything custom. And we actually had him on the show about 10 years ago. Buy, sell, or hold.
You're being stopped by
Uncontexted Deace 2 is doing a subtle flex saying, "I know where you go to church."
Oh, that's a buy.
That's pretty cool if he is.
Or sell.
It's not very subtle at all.
Sell. We go to the same church and we don't even know it.
That could be true too. I mean, guys, we get stuff in the mail like once a week at the house from people. I have no idea who they are. No idea.
Wow. All right.
Amy loves that. She loves when you do that, by the way. She just loves it. She does not. No. Okay.
Fred Bell says, species go extinct for a reason. It's often nature's way of maintaining balance. Intervening with gene editing, especially to bring back extinct species or alter existing ones, could have unintended consequences. We might not fully understand the ripple effects on the ecosystem's evolution or our own survival. Just something to think about before we start playing with the code of life. This is in reaction. The
dire wolf?
To the dire wolf, which is not really the dire wolf. It was just a gray wolf that was genetically modified.
100% correct. Yes. No one apparently saw Jurassic Park. I'm 100% correct. All right. But again, without Christ, there's no impulse that exists amongst human nature to restrain this. Okay. I mean, you will have progress for progress's sake without Christ. You'll have Christ or chaos. Those are your options. You don't have a middle option. I mean, who was it? Yoram Harani, is that his name? The non-messianic Jewish scholar we had on the show like a year or two ago that was did a book on bring Christianity back.
Yes.
Okay, because he's right. Okay, now he disagrees on the source of Christianity. Otherwise, he'd be a Christian. But he is correct in that without Christianity, without the influence of a critical mass of people, and again, I don't know what critical mass means. I mean, there were 110 people that got the Holy Spirit one day at Pentecost. That ended up being a critical mass. Okay, I mean, I don't know what the number is, but I know it's more than what we have right now. And so, without a critical mass of people, particularly people in positions of cultural influence and authority, leading the number one leading place of authority culturally is the pulpit. Without that, there will be nothing to restrain these impulses. You will have Albert Schweitzer or the island of Dr. Moreau, and you will have no in-between, guys. There will be no in-between. There's not an in-between. There's no such thing as a secular realm. Someone will always rule and something will always be worshiped. Those are your options, period. And there's not a nuance. Christianity is the only worldview that actually provides the nuances that you want.
This has been going on for quite some time now. There's all kinds of stories about people who are so dedicated to the current pet they have that when that pet dies, they, instead of just getting a new dog, they clone that same dog. Because the addictions, the comfort addictions I'm talking about, we keep, even people with all kinds of victimology excuses, but they keep getting what they want over and over and over again. What is the limiting principle these days to people not getting what they want? I want it. It's my truth. It doesn't matter how crazy it is. And that's amongst many conservative Christians these days. They don't really have a limiting principle on comfort. Well, why isn't it going to end up at this then? And worse.
All right. Next up, we go to that one sooner. America is the new Rome, and we're about to enter our Caesarian phase.
Well, I mean, I've already diagnosed this. We are in a godless culture, and so when you have a godless culture, now let me define that, by the way, okay? Godless culture is a culture where there is not a critical mass of people indwelt with the Holy Spirit. That's a godless culture. So, Steve, you're essentially saying every culture that isn't predominantly Christian is godless. Yes. And history proves this. 100%. Yes. So, when you have that, okay, and so therefore there's your institutions and culture are not imbued by Christianity any longer, all right? You end up with a godless culture. And can you put that proposition back up there so I got the wording exactly right, Aaron, for just a second? Okay. When we have the Caesarian phase, he's not talking about a form of childbirth, meaning the Red Sea, when that's the phase we're in now. We're in the Red Caesar phase. A godless people, the best they can do is Rome will either be the total state, hat tip to our friend and colleague Oron McIntyre for coining that phrase a few years ago. That's what the left is for. On the right, we will have Red Caesars, okay? Men who are somewhere between a Gideon to who's a very troubled, maybe kind of feckless individual, but in a moment has an anointing on him of bravery, to a Josiah-level figure that is just fully sold out to the mission. Some tentpole between these two kinds of archetypes. And there's lots of different archetypes between those archetypes. You'll have Samsons and Davids and different Hezekiahs and different archetypes between those two archetypes. But that's the Red Caesar. The person that is either inherently strong or because that's the giftedness they were given at birth, or is in the moment strong and leads the people against the forces of unrighteousness. That's where we are. And that's the best we can do without revival. We can't do any better than that. And in fact, this is so true. Before there were several founding fathers before they wanted George Washington to be the first president. What did they want him to be the first what? King. That's how true this is, right? I mean, we were made to be ruled. We were. And that's why Paul says, you will be a bondservant to something. Either Christ or your own sin, which makes you a bondservant to Satan. But everybody will serve one of these two masters with no in between.
I completely agree. I think it's time we actually go down those man on the street things where it's usually just ridiculous leftists or, weird street urchins where we're asking them, what's 1 + 1, and they don't know, that kind of stuff. We really need to start asking these questions to verify what Steve is saying of honestly people on the right that think they're on the right, because honestly, I don't think they would have many cogent answers to push back against what Steve said. I think they'd be, whatever. Does it keep those TVs cheap? I would have pushed back a long time ago and on this if I thought Steve was wrong, but he's been over the target on this for quite some time.
Porking America is next. Watching conservative hosts dance around the tariff issue is like watching Lindsey Graham navigate Pride Month. Awkward, evasive, and deeply committed to never telling the whole truth. I
don't know if I agree with that analogy, but I sure as heck like it. So I will buy it. I don't know if it's appropriate in terms of its context and application, but I love its I love its imagination, so I will buy.
Is that Scott Walker's burner account? I'm selling.
Timothy Stevens says elections are a farce if the people we elect cannot act without the approval of people we did not elect. As things stand, our votes are irrelevant because of the left's control of judgeship. It allows it to retain control of the country no matter who wins elections.
I'll buy the first part. We're not at the second part yet.
Yeah.
But we'll get there. We will absolutely get there. And I haven't said this in a few years, but remember, the enemy is a nihilist. He has no allegiances. Even to the poor souls that are doing his bidding, he has nothing in store for them when they arrive under his jurisdictional authority in hell but torment and affliction. It's not like, these are rival country clubs and heaven's like the really good one because God's the superior. And if you do the enemy's bidding when you get to hell, it's kind of the knockoff version, where it's like you get the booze that you could buy at Walmart, not and heaven had the imported stuff. No, the enemy hates the people doing his bidding every much as he hates the people who aren't. He just hates us. And so the goal here is to create a situation where the last refuge of human liberty and freedom on this planet succumbs to nihilism, where one side is told, let your freak flag fly, no restrictions, do whatever you want, even to their kids, and do it to their faces. Yeah. And to the people who own all the guns, who thought they had a peaceable political process to push back on this, and like real law enforcement, you say to them, your votes don't count. You take their votes away so they don't count. You bog them down in bureaucracy so those things don't count. And you tell them, and then the devil sits back and says, you know what, I think you guys should really just fight this out. It looks to me like you got no choice but just to let the shooting start. Then the folks in Washington do what they really want to do, which is Tiananmen Square your rear ends. And the enemy doesn't care. He doesn't care. He's not a Democrat. He's a nihilist. And think of who you believe is the most hardened demonic leftist. They're not going to get some kind of day off in hell. Hey, because you did such a great job doing our bidding above ground, only 6 days a week does the torment await. No. If anything, those people get tormented more out of sheer delight that you were that useful of their idiot. This is a level of malevolence and evil, frankly, we cannot even comprehend because we can't even comprehend our own sin. And we don't want to acknowledge how much God hates our own sin, let alone how much the enemy truly hates us. So that level of nihilism is the goal. I would urge you, hold it off for as long as you can. Doesn't mean we never get to this point. There's history books that say otherwise, right? So don't be naive. I'm not telling you just take your guns and throw them in the river. But no, you've got way more freedom than any people on earth have ever had, even right now. If you write stuff like this but have never been to your school board meeting, you're doing it wrong, okay?
Oh, amen.
You're just doing it wrong.
Amen. You're stealing my thunder.
There were Sons of Liberty before there was an American Revolution. There was a Tea Party before there was an American Revolution. There are things that are still accessible and doable before we embrace this level of nihilism. If you've not done any of them, then you're premature and you've got the order wrong, respectfully.
Thank you. Amen to that. It's exactly where I was going. This is why I'm hard on Enlist and non-accounts who always are lamenting, oh, you don't understand what's going to happen to me. Well, that's why they do it to you, because they know you're scared. They know you won't do anything. We will have, in a land of we the people, the first person we need to blame for our current circumstances is we the people, the man in the mirror. Are you doing enough? Even close. Most of you can't say that. You just can't. Now, that's also a question our friends at Constitution Wealth have. I mean, they are also asking, are you doing enough? All right, are you unknowingly or knowingly bankrolling the destruction of American values with your investments? Do you know if your hard-earned investment dollars are being used against the Trump administration and the agenda that many of us just voted for? And so therefore you're supporting that which is threatening the very fabric of our great nation. Your investment should be working as hard as you do.
And they should therefore be aligning with what you believe in. So let's build the parallel economy together by working with an investment firm composed of professionals. They're patriots just like you. Join the movement of Americans using their investments to hold companies accountable for their ethical behavior. Take control of the future of America. Let's not get complacent. Visit constitutionwealth.com/blaze, constitutionwealth.com/blaze for a free consultation. That's constitutionwealth.com/blaze. Constitution Wealth is a registered investment advisor. You should review their disclosures at constitutionwealth.com to understand their services and fees. All investing, of course, involves risk, including the risk of loss. I am a client of the firm. This is a paid endorsement. My opinions, though, are my own.
All right, next up we go to Stephen Roselle. Before the 1913 enactment of the 16th Amendment income taxes, the primary revenue source of the federal government was tariffs and excise taxes. It would stand to reason that the current tariff implementation should coincide with reduction in income taxes.
100%
Ultimately, yeah, absolutely.
If they are
100%
broad and permanent as they are at
Yes.
this very moment, then I would agree with that.
Yes, because, and this is what, one of the several things that Daniel is rightfully screaming about right now. You can't squeeze us on both ends.
Correct.
Okay. We cannot have a punitive progressive income tax scheme. And then that's not even counting sales taxes, property taxes, excise taxes. And then on the other hand, we're going to have, this is where tariffs do become a tax. Okay. The reason why they weren't considered a tax from 1870 post-Reconstruction to 1913 pre-income tax is because we didn't have these other levels of taxation. So they were still technically a tax, but they were viewed as the primary funding mechanism. It wasn't necessarily a pejorative of a term. But you can't squeeze us on both ends now, okay? We cannot continue this punitive progressive tax scheme and then at the same time slap 400% tariffs on China, so the goods that I want I can't afford because of how much money you're skimming from me right off of the top. You see what I'm saying? So yes, 100% agree on that.
You bet.
Next, we go to Brian White. No matter how you view the concept of predestination and its relationship to salvation, it doesn't affect that Jesus' final commandment is that he physically gave the apostles was to go and make disciples. Whether you think you can only believe in God after he changes your heart or you believe anyone can choose to accept the gift, it doesn't actually matter. Our job is to present the gospel to the world. All the other stuff we argue about between denominations and doctrines is mechanics.
By and large, 100% agree with this. And when we get to these chapters in Romans later this year, listen, I'll tell you what I think, where I come down on this debate. When we get there, and I'll tell you why, and we'll all three do that. But ultimately, in many respects, it's irrelevant. Because even if you are more committed to the tulip than John Calvin, do you know why you go and preach the gospel to all the nations? I mean, if you're the God sovereignty people, I've got a real good reason for why you go and preach the gospel to all the nations. Because God said so. Do I need another rationale? Do I need a 5-point exegesis on what that means? Other than the King of the universe ransomed himself to bring you back from hell, and in return told you to go do this. Should be good enough. Mm-hmm. That ought to be a good enough reason for absolutely anybody. God told me to do it, and that's good enough. So I'm just going to do it for that reason, and it doesn't really require any deeper or further thought. But thanks. Now, I do think these differences can cause necessary discussion and debate when it comes to church practices. For example, the hardcore Arminian who will not risk offending someone that comes to their church because that might be the only time they'd ever hear the gospel, and they'll walk away, and therefore their salvation is in your hands. But by and large, the same thing would apply to that Arminian, which is, you could flip this around and say, if you're the Arminian who's watering down your gospel presentation because you're worried of offending people, did God tell you to water his word down? Did he tell you to do that ever?
No.
Did he tell you to preach the full counsel of God in season and out of season? Is that what it says? So then just do it because he said so. So to the Calvinist who's like, well, why do I have to evangelize if everybody's elect? Because God told you to do it. Do you need another reason? You're the God sovereignty people. He said, go do this. So you should just, good enough. You should be the people the least questioning because God told me to do it. You're the elect people. You believe in the ultimate sovereignty of God. Well, I would flip that around to the Arminian and I would say, don't water anything down. because God didn't give you permission to do that. Just, you don't need any further reason other than God told you to preach the full counsel of his word. So just do that. Just, you know how much simpler things would be in all of our lives? I'm just going to do that because God's word said so. And I really don't think I need a better reason than that. Unfortunately, we're human beings and we're not that simple. And I'm raising my hand, starting with myself. Yes.
Have some breaking news here. Statement, it's big news too. Statement from President Trump. Quote, based on the lack of respect that China has shown to the world's markets, I'm hereby raising the tariff charge to China by the United States of America to 125%, effective immediately. At some point, hopefully in the near future, China will realize that the days of ripping off the USA and other countries is no longer sustainable or acceptable. Conversely, and based on the fact that more than 75 countries have called representatives of the United States, including the Departments of Commerce, Treasury, and the USTR, to negotiate a solution to the subjects being discussed relative to trade barriers, tariffs, currency manipulation, and non-monetary tariffs, and that these countries have not, at my strong suggestion, retaliated in any way, shape, or form against the United States, I have authorized a 90-day pause and a substantially lowered reciprocal tariff during this period of 10%, also effective immediately. Thank you for your attention in this matter. Already within the last 4 minutes, stock market has gone gangbusters after that.
This now we have a clear message. Yep. Ultimately, this is about
isolating China. Yep.
And I think that is a much more winnable message. I think it's also the best overall in terms of quality of message, not just easiest to make, but the best overall message. And it is one to enlist the American people. And this is classic, bargaining right here. Okay. Hey, you know what? You've got 2 witnesses to a crime, maybe 2 accomplices to a crime, and you've got them each in witness rooms, right? And you send a questioner, inquisitor into each one of those rooms, and you tell them both, hey, whichever one of you gives me something first gets the best plea agreement. So and you walk out of the room, and you let them sit there and stew in it. You see what I'm saying? And the one who says, hey, before you even walk out of the room, I got something to tell you. That's the guy who gets the best deal. You know what I'm saying? That's essentially what you're doing here. All right? And this is the most leverage we have, which is ultimately, do you want to do business with us or with China? What is your preference? Okay.
Do you trust China to play the world's mall cop? That's basically, I think that's what's on the table here. Because that's
what doing business means. We're like in a relationship with one another here. We're not just exchanging widgets and wampum. Correct. You're a partner of the United States. Yes. Now, again, Bobby Knight remains correct. The other team is on scholarship too. All right. So they're going to get this message even louder and clearer than we're getting it. So we will now see how they choose to respond. Okay. We will see. I think the 125% number is really smart because you got one of your key spokespeople out there saying 400%. So it's just enough to get their attention, but not enough so it's so outrageous that it looks like you're bullying them at the same time. But we'll see how China responds now. Folks, SelectQuote is one of America's leading insurance brokers. They've got nearly 40 years of experience. They've helped over 2 million customers find over $700 billion with a B dollars in savings in coverage since 1985. Other life insurance brokers, they offer impersonal, one-size-fits-all policies that may cost you more and cover you even less. While SelectQuote's licensed insurance agents, they work for you to tailor a life insurance policy for your individual needs in as little as 15 minutes. Have you ever wondered about getting coverage maybe with a pre-existing condition? High blood pressure, no problem. Diabetes, they can help you with that too. So get the right life insurance for you for less at SelectQuote.com/Steve. Go to SelectQuote.com/Steve today to get started. That's SelectQuote.com/Steve. Let's welcome in the weekly prophet of woe and lamentation, our good friend Daniel Horowitz. Good to see you, my friend. How you be?
I'm doing all right, Steve. Politics is like the weather. If you don't like it, just wait another 5 seconds.
Indeed, we say that every Midwestern state, I think, has that saying. You don't like the weather in Indiana, Iowa, Minnesota. We all say that. All right, here's what I want to do because I was literally verklempt to use one of your Yiddish phrases. I was literally verklempt about this interview because there's literally 60,000 things I could ask you, right?
Yep.
Okay. And so I wasn't sure where to even begin. So I'm gonna do it like this. All right. If I could put you in the White House right now and a private audience with 3 people in the administration, any 3, you get them one-on-one for a substantial period of time, at least 30 minutes. All right. Given everything going on right now, if I could get you an audience one-on-one for 30 minutes with 3 people in the administration, whom would you choose and what would your message be given what's going on right now?
No, so obviously Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, has got to be the guy in there. Stephen Miller would be number 2. And number 3 would actually be J.D. Vance because I think he wields a lot of influence over Trump. What would I say? Well, Steve, there's 2 tranches. There's trade policy being the center of the universe. Within that narrow box, what should we do? And then there's what should be the center of the universe. So let's start with the current news. Within trade, that like nothing else matters. This is what we're going to blow our entire wad on. So yeah, I was advocating the entire time. You've heard me say it. That we should have made this more about China and national security and assemble a coalition against them rather than swinging in a bar at 193 nations and isolating ourselves. So this just came out, and I think that's a good signal, that he's going to pause the tariffs on the other countries, focus on China, and I think that is a signaling good direction. I think it's reflective of the fact that, to your point, there are diverse opinions in the administration. Mm-hmm. So what you're often seeing, people think it's like 3D, 4D chess. It's actually an amalgamation of different views winning out on any given day. So this was a cave, but I think it's a good cave. It's a place where I think it's important. What I would say more broadly is there's a lot to say about trade. It's not the fundamental reason why our country is a crap hole. I want to turn your audience's attention back to October 2024. If you would get anyone in the room on the right and say, are we a weak or strong nation? People would have said, we're weak as hell. After 4 years of Biden and to a certain extent 1 to 2 generations of terrible policies, you would have had first and foremost, obviously, the debt-driven inflation, Federal Reserve policies, venture socialism, healthcare. I mean, we spend $4.9 trillion a year as a nation on that freaking dumpster fire that I can tell you Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos aren't spending, in their population. The labor stuff, the eco stuff, the green energy, right? All that stuff. And then you have education and obviously social issues, depression, drugs, right? And all that stuff is what has rotted out America, rotted out the middle class, working class, Appalachia, the Midwest, the Rust Belt. And then on top of that, depending on your view, you would add on, and maybe certain trade agreements over the last generation has helped accelerate and exacerbate that trend. I think that's a fair assessment of where we were. Now, fast forward 3 minutes later. Okay, it's almost 3 months later, but it may as well be 3 minutes later. I don't care if you have Calvin Coolidge. I don't care if you have Ronald Reagan. I don't care if you have Chip Roy, you or me, or Ron DeSantis as president. There's nothing economically that you could have gotten into place at this juncture that would have fundamentally changed that. So are we currently a strong or weak country? Okay? So, and I frame it this way because if you start now, it all gets back to the man and everyone gets insulted and it all becomes about him. But it's not. I think militarily, like with the Houthis, you could change your deterrent with military strategy pretty quickly. But the things that we're talking about are long-term enduring trends. On some of them, mainly the debt, Trump is not good on. On some of them, he's signaling good changes on regulatory things, but they haven't been changed yet. So we are a very weak nation. Now, if you come with that mindset to suddenly trying to rebalance a trade deficit with 193 nations, including 2-bit nations, that there's no way they could ever reach parity with our consumer base, no matter what you do. Well, we don't have a strong hand. Mm-hmm. We're in debt like hell. Steve, do you know what our biggest export is? Do you know what it is?
War.
Our biggest export is debt, the treasury.
Well, I was going to guess that, but I figured that you meant something like a tangible good, but okay.
Yeah, so tangible goods, I think it's minerals, oil is about $325 billion a year. I think last year debt probably would have been, foreign nations and investors would have been about $500 billion. And that's what's crowding out buying real substance. So we're demanding that people buy that from us, but then we want to set the rates at zero. So I'm sure you saw the big news over the last 24 hours is that after all this, what was one of the big goals? Bring down the 10-year treasury. It went up. And you know why it went up? Because we didn't fix the other problems. The fiscal deficit is the bigger issue in either direction than a trade deficit. That is the problem. And to me, what I would yell at them with is the bigger issue than what he did or is evolving with trade is that he is strong-arming conservatives like never before to adopt a piece of SHIT, Senate bill, that adds $5.8 trillion to the debt and another $500 billion in new spending in return for a promise to cut at least $4 billion, 0.004% of the projected $89 trillion budget over 10 years. So you can't have it both ways. If you love the Medicaid and you love the debt and you love the welfare state, then you ain't going back to 1800s where we subsisted on tariffs, and you ain't bringing back the industrial base. Okay? I mean, it just, to me, it is indefensible to pursue those goals that they stated, assuming they were beyond just getting other countries to bring down their tariffs, and at the same time, double down on a fiscal deficit.
I like this exercise. Let's play this out with a follow-up, if you don't mind. Okay, so I'm going to put myself in the place of the White House, which will make a lot of people in that White House probably very uncomfortable. But I'm going to do it for the sake of this exercise. All right, and say, in exchange, Daniel, for your honesty and transparency here in this private one-on-one that we're having, we're going to return the favor. Here's where we are. We have an extremely dysfunctional 3-seat majority in the House with leadership that to call them weak and anemic would be a compliment. All right, we're talking barely vertebrate human beings here. I have a Freedom Caucus that is outnumbered by the Bill Kristol Caucus about 2-3 to 1. I don't think I can, even if I wanted to do what you wanted me to do, I don't think I can get the Senate on board. I don't think with the Congress as it is. I think that the political capital it will take in order to lean on Congress, frankly, I don't have. We did 24 hours of nervous tension on tariffs, and I had 7 of my own senators sign off on taking this power away from me and co-sponsor a bill, okay, to virtue signal against me. And so at this point, the will is simply doesn't exist in the legislative body to do what you want. And I've got to grow the pie. We're going bankrupt here. I've got to grow the pie. No constituencies coming forward to say, I volunteer as tribute at the Hunger Games. Our constituency will take less. No one's volunteering for this. All right. And so if no one's going to volunteer to take less and I don't have the political critical mass to spend less, then I'm left with having to grow the pie bigger. And that's why we're expending all of our political capital in this arena instead, because we can't shrink the slice. No one wants a smaller slice of the pie. So we've got to grow the pie. Okay. All right. So if that was their counter, I want you to think about that for a minute. And after I talk about Birch Gold, tell me what you would say in response. Okay. So our friends over at Birch Gold, they notice all the various things that Daniel's talking about. And again, gold continues to climb, even with our guys in charge, because the uncertainty is still paramount. It's a different kind of uncertainty than what we had before. Like we were uncertain before we go into jail today or not. But we're still uncertainty nevertheless, folks. All right. And so gold is still there as your hedge of protection against uncertainty, like what we are saying right now. I would encourage you to get a free consultation with Birch Gold Precious Metals specialists. The first step to do that is to text Steve to 989-898. Text Steve to 989-898 and receive your free no obligation info kit on gold. Did you know that President Trump specifically exempted gold and silver bullion from these tariffs? Did you know that? All right. So text Steve to 989-898. There's never been a better time to look into a tax-sheltered gold and silver account right now. Convert your existing IRA or 401k into one of those right now with Birch Gold. With an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau, thousands of thankful customers. Text my name, Steve, to get started. 989-898. Text Steve to 989-898. Get your free info kit on gold from Birch Gold today. All right. So, Daniel, I wanted to give you a minute to think about how you'd respond to that. What would you say in reply to what I just laid out?
Let's take the political capital side, the second half of what you said. For the amount of political capital he has expended and will expend and continue to expend on this endeavor, and really come out with, at best, no runs, no hits, no errors. You could freaking repeal Obamacare. You could freaking do welfare reform. You could get rid of foreign labor, and you'd come out with a better message, and you'd come out ahead and not spook the markets as much. And when I say the markets, I don't just mean the top 7. You've heard me say the Russell 2000 small cap have erased 5 years of gains, much worse than the S&P. Now that ties into your next thing. Well, I don't have the power. Like, look, Steve, I'm sick of hearing this, that somehow, on the one hand, Trump's 100% and then he goes down to 0%. I disagree that this is the conversation that they would have in the White House, because they're not having that conversation, because that's not their argument. Because it presupposes that Trump is really with the Freedom Caucus. It's like, darn, what I got to do, these rhinos. It's not like that. Trump has been, and look, I've held back until now, but it's too many times. He has been the driving force when he was in power the first time, when he was in power in charge of Republicans, even not president, but in the 2 years in 2023, 2024, in Ukraine, single-handedly. In fact, without him, it wouldn't have passed. The Pfizer reauthorization, every budget bill, the December one, this CR, He wants this. I mean, that's what I'm saying. He never, ever has leaned in against a rhino. Ever. Okay? I mean, it's an undefeated streak.
Well, now you've got Ken Paxton announcing a Senate campaign, much to the jubilee of Trump's own online influencer base. So
but he hasn't said anything.
And he hasn't said anything. It'll be very interesting to see how Trump responds to that. Yeah.
Tom Tillis said, who do I choke for these tariffs? He's in cycle. Mm-hmm. I didn't hear Trump call him out, but he calls out Andy Harris. He calls out Chip Roy. He says they're grandstanders. These guys need to get in line. It's an undefeated observation I have. Now, I have a theory behind it, why, but he will never attack. You could always be to the left of him, even when you go after a pretty core thing like his trade agenda. Because a lot of them are going after that. Trump hasn't signaled he wants to repeal Obamacare because he doesn't. It's not that he doesn't have the capital to force them. He doesn't want to. And that's a different argument. So, Steve, it's just a little frustrating. It's hard to make the case when the fact of the matter is, and why does Trump believe this? Because this goes back to a longstanding problem that Trump doesn't understand policy, and he doesn't understand the mutual exclusivity of different propositions. So if you ask him, does he want to cut spending? Of course he does. But he thought you could repeal Obamacare without repealing Obamacare. Remember the fight in 2017? And this is the problem. And it's always going to be a problem. And my concern is that we're going to be left with not ignoring the courts, not demanding Congress codify anything, not getting any substantial thing out of Congress, endorsing every rhino, not just federally, but even in the red states, so we don't have an enduring legacy when the Democrats come back in to push back. This is my concern, and I feel we need a plan to avoid it.
Good stuff as always, my friend. Thank you for being with us. All right, take care. God bless.
Thank you for giving me thank you for the time.
You bet. Of course. Love having you. All right, guys. We've got about 2 minutes here. What do you think?
The one example that he uses, I just don't agree with. Obamacare. I don't believe for 1 second that Donald Trump could use his political will to get that repealed. I don't. Do I think he could be more aggressive with his political will to make sure that there are permanent offsets, and that, as some people are concerned, that Doge is ultimately more one-time dinner theater than actual sustain? Yes. But I don't like Obamacare. That's the red flag that I'm hearing. Like, guys, do you? We thought that's like, to me, that's a talking point. And all respect, Daniel, that's a talking point of the last time around when we thought we were going to do that, and we didn't. The Republicans don't have that in them. You have to pick the right target.
Okay. What do you think, Aaron?
I mean, I think the argument here about where to expend political capital, and he is expending a lot of political capital right now, but it's an area that he can act in massive ways unilaterally. Whereas you have to herd cats. Again, it's not an excuse necessarily, but it's just the reality. Where can I have the biggest impact unilaterally the fastest? And it is on the area of trade, because the president has broad authority, which some are trying to take away from him now. I don't know why we had the Trade Restriction Act of 2025, but we didn't for 2015 and 2005. It's only when he's actually trying to do something affirmative. This is an area where he can act, and is acting unilaterally, that can make the biggest bang for the buck. Yeah, it comes at a cost of a lot of political capital, but it's something he can do by himself.
Good stuff as always. We're going to stick around and finish buy, sell, or hold in the overtime for subscribers. For the rest of you, see you tomorrow, Romans 8:28.